Welcome to r/entitled people, where this crazy drunk lady calls the police on a worker because she doesn't sell her a donut. Entitled woman wants me to sell her a donut. I work nights doing dessert prep at a fancy schmancy deli. Occasionally, we throw fried donuts with crazy toppings on the menu. I like to make test rounds of new flavors for the crew before we launch them. I usually work towards the front of an open concept kitchen and I'm fully visible from the streets. There's a strip of bars and clubs directly across. A few weeks ago, I just finished some donuts and was arranging them for some Instagram photos. I heard a knock on the window and looked up, assuming I'd see one of my friends who works mortal hours headed home from the bar. Wrong. It was a woman I'd never seen before. Assuming it was one of my co-workers' friends, I gave her a polite wave and went back to my iPhone photography. She hit the window again. More like a bang than a knock. Last summer, I'd been at work overnight when someone broke all of our front windows, so this made me jump. The woman was gesturing for me to come over to the door. We still have a takeout window from COVID, so I unlocked it and slid it up about an inch. I'm not a nice person and I just wanted to finish my work. "Can I help you?" I said. At this moment, I realized she was very drunk. "I'd like a donut." "Sorry, Mom, we're closed. I just came over here to see if I could get you to leave so I can finish my job and leave myself." "But they're right there." At this point, I proceed to shut the window, carry my tray of donuts further into the kitchen, and proceed with photos. The woman knocks a few times and then leaves after letting out one very high-pitched scream. Now here is where the story gets really interesting. Less than an hour later, my boss texts me to see if I'm at work. The woman had called the police to report that she saw a break-in at the restaurant on her way home from the bar because I refused to sell her a donut. Now look, I'll be completely honest guys, up until the end of this story, I didn't really mind what the woman was doing. Yeah, screaming is annoying, that's unnecessary. But the rest of the stuff, look, I'll be honest, I've been there. When you're drunk and you've just come out of a club and you're desperate for food and you see some and you're not thinking straight and you're intoxicated, that can happen. And I'm not excusing that behavior. I'm not saying it's a good thing or reasonable at all. I'm just saying I've been there, I'll be honest. And yeah, look, it's not good for employees like OP who are working hard and working late and, you know, trying to do their own thing. It's obviously extremely annoying and I feel bad. I'm just saying I can kind of understand it. Like maybe you've been there as well. When you're drunk, you do crazy things. I think OP handled it very well. It didn't seem like it was that much of a nuisance and, you know, she just sort of sent this drunk lady on her way. The thing that I cannot understand though, and something that I have never thought about doing or even come close to doing before, is calling the police when drunk to report this. That is inexcusable. For the vast majority of the story, I could pretty much understand everything this entitled woman was doing until that last paragraph. That is insane, and I really hope she gets written up and charged for wasting police time. That's ridiculous. Now for our next post. "You want to go through my phone just because I'm going through yours?" Greetings, Redditors. I've just twice survived a journey through the best place to witness aberrant human behavior. No, it wasn't Walmart at 2 a.m., it was the airport. The act of going through security and getting on an airplane has a tendency to give me some anxiety. And by some, I mean borderline gibbering madness levels of anxiety. Knowing this, I went to my local adult use dispensary and asked for the good stuff. I think I specifically told the girl, "Flying makes me anxious, and I'd like to be so high I can look down and see the plane at cruising altitude." She gave me a hilariously expensive bottle of THC CBD pills and recommended I take one, wait a half hour, and if I still feel twitchy, take another. Now naturally I disregarded her correct advice and ate 3 while I had my shoes off in the TSA line. I figured that would be the sweet spot to avoid the high around police paranoia, and it would hit me before the plane's safety briefing started. And I wasn't wrong. I recall sitting down in my more expensive and roomy than usual seat in the aircraft, and found myself so stoned I was marveling at my own thumbs. The person sitting next to me was a pretty girl in her late teens or early 20s, and she found my mental state kind of funny. We started chatting about this and that, and it came up in conversation that I have a dog, and she simply refused to believe he was as adorable as I said he was. Naturally, I whipped out my phone and brought up pictures and videos of my fur baby. There was much awe to be had, and then I guess she was done with the guided tour and just decided to pick up my phone and start going through my gallery. I didn't react in time to prevent her from grabbing as I was intoxicated. But I did come up with a funny way to fix it. I grabbed her phone from her tray table and started fiddling with it. Now, she didn't notice right away, so I started adding little frustration noises and grumbling about the stupid thing not unlocking. She looked over and flipped right out. "What the F do you think you're doing?" She starts grabbing at her phone, my phone forgotten in panic. I looked at her with bloodshot eyes and that trademark vacant stoner grin and said, "Well, you started going through my phone. I figured I might as well return the favor." She was briefly gobsmacked, but then resumed flipping her lid about how I would do so much as touch her phone. How very dare I? And then she hits the call mum button. A flight attendant who appeared to be in her early 40s, with that southern drawl unique to those rare specimens who can have a come to Jesus talk with you in the same tone of voice she'd used to ask if you'd like some lemonade, showed up and asked the girl how she could help. The girl demanded I be arrested on landing for being stoned in Texas and for invading her privacy. The attendant turns to me and asked if what the girl said is true. I said, "Well, Mom, she's half right. I will be stoned in Texas, but I only picked her phone up and poked at it some after she grabbed mine without asking and started actually going through it." The attendant looks back at the girl, who suddenly didn't want to make eye contact, then sighed and asked if we both have our own phones now. We both confirmed we did. She said that she won't be calling ahead about anyone, but she absolutely will if she hears about this again. We both indicated we understood and received the sternest of looks from the attendant before she left. The girl spent the rest of the flight giving me the cold shoulder and muttering about creeps and the nerve of some people. I proceeded to pass out like anyone who consumes too much THC and woke up only for snack time, where the nice flight attendant gave me 2 bags of goldfish and a wink. Wow, I really rate the flight attendant here. She was, coming across as professional just to sort of appease this entitled woman, but in reality, she was clearly just on your side, and she could probably tell that this woman was, not very pleasant to be sitting next to anyway. Getting you those snacks, very good. I've got to say though, about this woman, if you can't take it, then you can't give it. I'm sorry, you've taken this bloke's phone without permission. How can you be annoyed when he does the same thing to you? That's not right, that's not fair. Ridiculous, really. A little bit of perspective for you, my darling. Let's carry on. And now moving on to our third and final story of today's episode. How dare you not breathe my air? So, I live in London, where COVID has been a massive issue. Case numbers are through the roof and nobody wears masks or distances. My family and I are forced to use public transport daily to get to and from school, as we cannot afford any other transport. Also, my mum can't drive a car, and she and my sister cannot physically cycle or walk the 6 miles to and from the school several times a day. It's hell. To try and stay as safe as possible, we try to use the 4 seats on the lower deck by the driver, or me and my sibling use the bench by the front door. So there's only ever 1 seat not in use that we're blocking, which should not be an issue, given the fact that we're in a giant wave, you would think. Today, a woman got on, and from the moment she saw us, she was fuming. "Excuse me," she said sarcastically and loudly, pulling down her thin, ill-fitting scarf face covering. When my mum ignored her, she rolled her eyes and tried to engage others in the situation with gestures. "Honestly, excuse me, are you deaf?" She went on and on, spitting and huffing until I quietly said, "She is deaf though," at which she marched off to sit in another seat that had been empty the whole time. Imagine a person in a priority seat having non-visible disabilities. When on my own, I usually use the front seats in front of the stairs on the upper deck, as this is the best spot to distance when alone and avoid confrontation. Several people have shouted, tried to yank off my headphones, and waved dramatically in my face, attempting to get me to allow them to sit shoulder to shoulder, knee to knee, with their maskless, panting selves. Thanks, but no thanks. This woman, on another occasion, took the biscuits. She hauled a giant trolley up the stairs and scoured the upper deck. There was a bounty of space downstairs and up, before honing in on me. I was leaning on the window with my heavy bag next to me. "Move it, now," she demanded, already annoyed that I hadn't automatically made space for her. I simply shook my head, knowing that if you start talking, they get all involved and will never leave. She gasped in genuine shock and repeated, "Move your bag now." I slid one earphone off and, taking a deep breath, said, "I am so sorry, but I'm seated here to distance. I just want to be safe, and you can't sit here. I really am so sorry. Now, if there were no other seats, I would have gone and stood by the back doors and not bothered, as you get plenty of air and space there, but I just had a 10-hour school day and I was shattered. I didn't want to stand for the next 40 minutes just for this woman. She could sit by anybody, but there were no more double seats, and I didn't want to be directly next to someone and not be able to spray down the seats. At this point, she was done talking, and instead grabbed the handle of my bag, which contained a very delicate vintage CD player, several loose CDs I was working through on the long journey, my already jacked phone, and several large textbooks. I'm going into the fire service, and doing all the walking I do with a heavy bag is really good training on days that I've got no time for a proper workout. And struggling with the weights, she tried to throw it on my lap. In shock, I stood up and shouted, "I'll just get off." Delighted, she stood and dramatically tapped her foot, and fussed over how long it took me to zip my bag and swing it onto my back, which was 6 seconds or so. She then looked out of the comfy, disinfected bench as I stood at the bus stop, shaking with anxiety, detailing where she touched my things, and frantically checking if my player had been knocked by my textbooks, as I had no time to properly pack up. Smiling. What is wrong with London? Now listen guys, London is by far and away my favourite city, by a distance, I'll be completely honest, that I've ever been to on the planet. I've lived there like my entire life. I absolutely love it. However, even I, a massive London advocate, would admit that some people that you do meet out and about, like this woman, are frankly terrible. And with everything going on right now, the pandemic, COVID, social distancing, etc., a lot of people, yeah, OP is right, aren't really respecting the rules as much as they should. I don't know why, if that's just an ignorance thing or a lack of common sense and just basic understanding, but yeah. Women like this do exist in London, that is for sure. I've dealt with a couple of them myself. It's not great. And look, I do feel for OP. Clearly, she is being so careful about this whole COVID thing, correctly, obviously. And when there are people like this that are just making life extremely difficult and being so rude, yeah, it's tough. Like, I would say to OP, oh, do this, and that will sort it in future. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do in this situation. You just have to kind of take it on the chin and accept that this happens. It's horrible, but what are you going to do? Like, apart from just having a big argument with her, spraying germs at one another because she's not even wearing a mask or whatever, you want to minimize contact as much as you can. You don't really have a solution other than just leaving. It's tough, but during the pandemic like this, I don't really know what more you can do. Sorry. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of r/entitled people. If you enjoyed this one and you want more from me right away, click on this. Don't even think about it. Click on it. It's just appeared on your screen. How amazing is that? Technology is beautiful. Click it right now. Don't ask any more questions. Don't go down in the comments. Don't comment. Don't have a look at it. Click the video. Just, why haven't you click it? Oh, you have done a cheers.